Okay, so now let's go and do we're doing the review test for this video from my book, Overcoming ACT English. You might have also just bought the individual sections on TPT, Teachers Pay Teachers. Again, if you have those resources, I recommend that you try this on your own first, then attempt corrections on your own and come back to this video for any explanations on stuff that you're stuck on to get the best results. So let's start with number one. Number one says, we have it right here, they were a neutral beige. So I'm going to read two sentences above and below. I imagined my desk by the window where sunlight would pour over lesson plans and stacks of student work. This was going to be my first year teaching, and I was determined to make my classroom an inspiring place. They were a natural beige, which I thought would serve as a blank canvas, grabbing a paintbrush. So already I know that this is an unclear pronoun issue because we don't know what they is referring to. So we need them to clarify that. So these would also not be appropriate. We need to be clear with what we're talking about. So the walls or the classroom would clarify what we're talking about. And in the next sentence, they talk about grabbing a paintbrush. I decided to paint a vibrant mural. So they're probably talking about the walls of the classroom, the walls. So we're going to pick C. Also, the classroom doesn't match the verb were there. So that's another thing. So now let's go to number two. I began to start with a tree. So began to start, that's redundant. Like began and start mean like the same thing. So we don't need to say both of those. So automatically I would say it's not going to be F, no change. And then, so now I'm going to look for which of these would be right. I begun with a tree. No. I started with a tree. That could be right. I begin with a tree. I made, so that sounds like it could be right, but then it says I made sure their branches. It doesn't say like make sure. So then it would have to be started. And I have to zoom out a little bit for this next one, but number three, it says, I made sure their branches. So there, we're determining like if there is correct or if we need to replace it with one of the other things. I just found a typo. So when I do this, I try to come up with as many answer choices that I think could trick people as possible. It looks like I included one too many. So this was supposed to be it's with an apostrophe S, so we're going to pretend like that's what it says right there. I made sure its branches, and it's referring to the tree's branches. So the tree is owning its branches. Remember, tree is singular, so it has to go with it instead of theirs. And then it has to be matching, like it has to, when it shows possession, it has to be the one that's actually without the apostrophe. So, because the one with the apostrophe means it is, like we couldn't say I made sure it is branches. That doesn't make sense. So it can't be no change. It can't be the one with the apostrophe. It has to be B, it's without an apostrophe to show that the one singular tree has ownership or possession of its branches. So for number four, it says, so we're going to kind of read it from the beginning. I began to start with, remember, we corrected it. So even though it sounds a little funky, I'm still reading it like that. I began to start with a tree. I made sure its branches reached out to different areas of knowledge, mathematics, science, literature, and art. So here we have a list, and the list is of different areas of knowledge. So remember, with the list, if we're trying to figure out which of these would not be an acceptable alternative to the bolded portion, we have to think about like the different ways that we can offset lists. So the colon is totally acceptable. So we can do a colon and then list the items afterwards. So that would mean that that option is acceptable. Obviously, they gave us, not that there's like a no change here anyways, but just saying. And some people might be confused and say like J is the same thing, but actually J is just a little bit different where they don't have that comma there. Remember in the punctuation chapter, I said that they aren't going to test you on the difference between like using comma and or just no comma, because in like British English, they say one thing, in American English, they say another. And there's all this like like debate around it. So for our purposes, they're the same exact thing. So this would also be correct, and that's totally fine. And then we have an M dash followed by the list of items separated by commas, which is totally fine. So that's acceptable. Remember, we're finding what's not acceptable, so what does not work. Then we have G, reached out to different areas of knowledge, such as mathematics, science, literature, and arts. That's totally acceptable. They're saying such as followed by the list. And then H says reached out to different areas of knowledge, mathematics, science, literature, and arts. This would be wrong because if they're placing a comma there, they're including the knowledge as part of the list when these things are the list that are, these things that I underlined are being listed as the different areas of knowledge. Like knowledge is not part of that list. Knowledge, like the different areas of knowledge is describing what that list is about. So H would not be acceptable. So now let's go to number 5. As the hours passed, I realized I had lost track of time. It was almost evening. So remember we said semicolon is the same thing as a period. So if a period works, a semicolon works. As the hours passed, I realized I had lost track of time. A period could go there. Let's see if that's okay with the part that follows. It was almost evening. That could also be its own sentence. So the semicolon is perfectly fine. And I could also automatically discount the other answers because like the other ones are going to make it longer. And remember, we want like the most concise option possible. So as long as that works and is the most concise, we're good to go. So then let's keep going to number 6. Let me just zoom in a little bit again. So for number 6, it says boxes filled with teaching materials were scattered into the room. So it would have to be G because that's the only one that's describing like the correct way that the box, like how of where the boxes were scattered. So like you wouldn't say boxes filled with teaching materials were scattered into a room. Like you don't scatter them into a room. You don't scatter them on a room or over a room. You scatter them around a room. And then for number 7, it says, taking a deep breath, I began unpacking the boxes, sorting the classroom materials, and organized the classroom seating. Right away, I see that this does not match for parallel structure because we have began unpacking, sorting, and then it just automatically changes to the ED ending, which does not match. So it definitely can't be no change because we have to maintain that parallel structure. Now, the other answer choices do change it so that there is parallel structure with the verbs. So now we can't discount them just based off of like not being parallel structure. It has to be something else. So let's see. Answer choice B would say, I began unpacking the boxes, sorting the classroom materials, and organizing the classroom setting. That sounds perfectly fine. Then it says C, I taking a deep breath, I were beginning. No, it would be I was beginning, if anything. That does not match for verb tense. Or not verb tense, subject verb agreement, I mean. So then for D, let's see, I began the process of unpacking the boxes, sorting the classroom materials, and organizing the classroom seating. Now that is totally fine, except that remember we want the most concise answer possible. You'll see that this one's a little bit longer than B. So just because of that, B would be the correct answer because it's the shortest choice that is also grammatically correct. Remember, we always want to be concise. And then let's talk about 8. Each item I pulled out brought back memories of my training days, and I felt a deep appreciation for the journey that brought me to this point. So there's an unnecessary comma placed right here. There's no reason there should be a comma right there. So automatically I know it can't be no change. And then we have the remaining options of okay, here automatically I can tell it's not going to be G because you have a comma right before a preposition. Back memories of, back memories with. So now I'm determining, okay, should it be of or with after back memories? Each item I pulled out brought back memories of my training days, or should it be brought back memories with my training days? Well, of would be the correct preposition to use there. So it would have to be answer choice H for this one. So for number 9, it says the bookshelf seemed unburdened, so I began filling it with books. So we were saying training days, appreciate this point. Okay. So the bookshelf seemed unburdened, so I began filling it with books. So unburdened, this is a word choice one where you have to determine like what's the best choice given the context. So if you're filling it with books, then that means that the bookshelves were probably empty to begin with. So we need a word that, well, actually, I didn't even look at that initially, but I guess I remembered somehow in the back of my brain that that's what I put there. But it has to be something that matches like the type of word that should go there. Like unburdened, like you don't really use that for like an empty bookshelf. Like that's just a weird word to use with that. Like drained also, blank, like it's not like a blank canvas or something like that. Like that's just not the wording that we use. We would describe it as empty. That would be the best word to use in this context. Now for the next one, so I began filling it. This was what also threw me off because I was like, I kind of want to fix that right away because I just know it's wrong. Like it just sounds bad. So here, when we have the word it, so I began filling it with books, it is supposed to be referring to bookshelves. So it is singular, bookshelves is not. Bookshelves is plural. So we can't be using it to refer to the plural noun of bookshelves. So let's see what here could be used instead. We have it, they, or them. So it would be them. So I began filling them with books because them could be plural. While they is also plural, we wouldn't say I began filling they with bookshelves. That's not how we would refer to a plural noun that's an object. And then for number 11, it says, I had a collection of children's books ranging from classic tales and new adventures. So I had a collection of children's books right away. Let's see, children's books. I see that like children's is changing. Like they have either children's, child, or child's or child. So automatically I know it can't be C or D because we don't say child's. Like the plural for children would be, if anything, like children. And we're not referring to just like a singular child. It's a group of children that we need to refer to. So it has to be either A or B. So now I have to determine, okay, what's the difference between A or B here? So had a collection of children's books. Oh, it looks like one has a comma and one does not have a comma. So like no change would mean that we keep the comma there. And if we change it to B, we would get rid of that comma. I had a collection of children's books ranging from classic tales and new you see, this is also tripping me up because I can automatically see like what the next thing is that I would want to correct. Ranging from classic tales and new adventures. So there would be a comma that's needed there. So it has to be A because you have the verbing modifier thing. Remember we talked about how like if you have independent and dependent clauses, you could usually just get away with independent and dependent clauses are always connected with a comma if you want like a steadfast rule, but there are some exceptions. And like one of the things that we talked about is like when we were going over exceptions was that you're usually going to see that the if it starts with an independent clause, like the dependent clause that follows would have to start with one of the things that it could start with that's acceptable is a verbing modifier, which means like an ing verb follows that comma, which is what we have here. So it would have to be A. And when I was going over number 11, I automatically saw that like, okay, I know this is a word pair thing. So automatically I saw the word from, and they like to trick you with and a lot when they do from. So like, I kind of already like knew that. Plus I've written this book, but like also from like doing so many practice exams and stuff with students, from needs to go with to. So automatically I know it has to be H right there. So now let's go to number 13. As I arranged them, let me focus that. Okay. As I arranged them, I thought about the countless stories that would soon be shared and the lessons it would teach my students. So automatically I know it is wrong because it's singular, and what's supposed to be where it is supposed to be referring to the countless stories, like multiple stories. So we can't use the singular it there. We have to use something that's plural to refer to multiple stories. So let's see what we can use there. So automatically I can cross out this one too, C. So it would have to be either B or D, and the only difference is that lessons has an S or it doesn't. So it's lessons they or lesson they. Let's check. As I arranged them, I thought about the countless stories that would soon be shared and the lesson they would teach my students, or would it be lessons they would teach my students? So if you're talking about countless stories, there's going to be like multiple lessons in those stories. So it's going to have to be lessons with an S, they. So that would be the correct answer. Which one says lessons they? That would be D. Or sorry, I just read that wrong. That one's the one without the S. The one with the S is B. So B is the correct one because it says lessons they with the S. Okay, so for number 14, it says, I placed comfortable beanbags and cushions in a corner, creating a cozy reading space. Cozy and reading are connected with a comma. Remember, when that happens, you have to check if and could go in that place. So could you say a cozy and reading space? Creating a cozy and reading space, that doesn't make sense, so it definitely can't be the no change one. And you wouldn't say cozy read space. Like, you still want reading space. It just can't be that cozy and reading are connected by a comma. And you wouldn't separate, like, it's not a list saying like you have cozy listed with reading and space, so it's not going to be this one. And then the only option left would be H, and that would just get rid of the comma because remember, cozy in this case would be modifying the reading space. So you can't say it's like, you can't separate out the cozy from that. It's modifying reading space. So for number 15, it says, I saved a special area of the room for students. Oops, let me zoom in a little bit. I saved a special area of the room for students' artwork. So students are owning the artwork, like it's showing possession or ownership. So remember, when we're talking about something that's plural, like students is plural, owning artwork, we have to have S apostrophe. So like there has to be an apostrophe after the S. So then the correct answer would be B. Okay, and then for number 16, it says, I pinned up a calendar, reminders, and a set of classroom rules, ensuring that everyone could see it clearly. Okay, so if we look at the answer choices, pinned up, so it looks like there's a difference with the commas and whether we use ensuring or like which ensuring, the IN or the EN one. So this would kind of be like a word choice thing too. So right away, I'm going to just go with the word choice to eliminate half the answer choices. So the I version of ensuring is like insurance. Think of that. Like they're spelled similarly. Like you insure someone like under their insurance policy, I guess could be an example. Like it would have to do with like that sort of thing, not like making sure, which is how we're supposed to be using it here. The making sure version of ensuring would be the E version. So automatically I can cross out A and B. So now I have to determine, okay, what's the difference between C and D? So it looks like the difference between C and D is right here with whether or not there's a comma. So pinned up a calendar, reminders, and a set of classroom rules, or pinned up a calendar, reminders. So it would have to be C because you're separating each item in the list correctly with commas. While calendar reminders are a thing, remember there's an A here. So it's talking about a calendar. Reminders would be plural, so like you couldn't say like a calendar reminders. Okay, so let's go to the next one. It says, I hope that those pieces of nature inside the classroom would help create a calm, nurturing environment. Okay, so that those pieces of nature. So it was talking about this is another one where you have to look for context. The final touch was a plant on my desk, so that's what they're referring to. So the plant is the piece of nature. So I hope that those pieces of nature, again, it's only one plant, so it can't be that one. And these pieces is also like has the same issue where it's plural when we're only talking about one plant. So now we have to decide between H and J. So the I hope that this piece of nature, or you could say I hope that that piece of nature, and we wouldn't say like that piece of nature, like that, just no, that would not work. So it would have to be H. So then for number 18, it says, with the room finally ready, I took a step back to admire my work, anticipating the many adventures ahead. Okay, right away, I see that we have an introductory phrase, with the room finally ready. So there should be a comma right after that. So I'm going to cross out the no change version and look for something that has a comma after. So it can't be B either. I would have to have, let's see, it would be with the room finally ready, with the room finally ready, those both have commas. So now let's see what's different about those. Then the difference would be, it looks like right here is the only difference with whether you put a comma before anticipating or not. So here we have, with the room finally ready, I took a step back to admire my work. This could be its own sentence. So this is the independent clause right here, followed by a dependent clause anticipating the many adventures ahead. Remember, independent and dependent, we usually connect with a comma, especially like one of the special instances where if you want to memorize like the exact rule would be independent and dependent. One of the ways that we usually connect those is with a verbing modifier. When a verbing modifier starts the dependent clause, which we see here with anticipating. So the following question is referring to the entire passage. Suppose the writer's goal was to entice future teachers to join the profession. Does this essay accomplish that goal? So right away you would determine, okay, yes or no. So I would say no, that would not be the goal. Now, a lot of people would get confused, or that would not accomplish that goal. A lot of people get confused here because they would be like, oh, it sounds so fun from the way they described it that I would want to be a teacher from that. But that's not what it's asking you. It's asking what the author's intention was, like what was the author's goal. So while you might have been persuaded by that, it's not what the author obviously set out to intend to happen with this essay. So automatically I'm going to cross off the yes versions, and then I'm going to predict my reason why I think that it does not accomplish this goal. And the reason why I think it doesn't accomplish this goal is that they weren't talking about like specific things about being a teacher that are so great or anything like that. Like it wasn't listing the benefits in the essay or anything like that. It was kind of just like describing what happens when this teacher is putting together their classroom. So I would say like no, because it's not giving like any reasons or explanations for why people should join the profession. It doesn't talk about that even really. So then if I look to see, okay, what matches what I said the most, that would be answer choice C. Okay, so now let's go to the second passage. So number one, it says Romero Brito, whose origin traces back to the vibrant city of Recife in Brazil, where he catapulted himself from a self-taught doodler to a commanding figure in the contemporary art world. Okay, so let's see. So we have a non-essential clause right here because there's comma, comma. We could cross that out in between. So that means that the subject Romero Brito has to be immediately followed by the verb for the sentence. So like you can't just say Romero Brito where he catapulted himself. You have to have the verb following the subject right there. Because otherwise we wouldn't have a verb in the sentence that matches the subject. So let's see, it would either have to be has catapulted himself or catapulting himself. So Romero Brito has catapulted himself from, or would it be Romero Brito catapulting himself from? It would be has catapulted himself from would make it a complete sentence because it would be Romero Brito has catapulted himself from a self-taught doodler to a commanding figure in the contemporary art world. The other one wouldn't form a complete sentence. You couldn't say Romero Brito catapulting himself from a self-taught doodler to a commanding figure in the contemporary art world, like you're waiting for it to finish. So let's go to number two, infusing his creations with a blend of pop art, cubism, and graffiti influences. Brito's works have been, right away, infusing his creations with a blend of pop art, cubism. Let's see, what are the differences? Works of Brito, Brito's works. Okay, so it's either like the comma placement, like one of the big things is like the comma placement is changing, and a little bit of the wording. So you need to have a comma before, like right here, there needs to be a comma because this is a non-essential clause, which needs to be surrounded by commas or em dashes or parentheses, but in this case, the other side is a comma, so we need a comma there. So we have to eliminate anything automatically that doesn't have a comma going right before that. So we would have to eliminate B and C. So then we're just deciding between A and D. So would it be correct to say works of Brito have been, or Brito's works have been? Well, the more concise answer would be A, no change, Brito's works have been. So then that would have to be the correct one. So then let's go to number 3. By the time he made an indelible mark on the Miami art scene in the 1980s, the art enthusiasts had already started celebrating his that's a French word, but it's like works of art, elevating him to a pedestal of international acclaim. So here we have to determine, okay, this is also a delete one. So we have to determine if that's irrelevant or not. So by the time he made an indelible mark on the Miami art scene in the 1980s, the art enthusiast, that doesn't even make sense. Like the art enthusiast, it would make sense to say like the art enthusiast had already started celebrating his like work of art. I forget like what it translates to exactly in French, but and I'm not going to attempt to like butcher the pronunciation of that. So it would make sense to say you're talking about the art enthusiasts are the ones celebrating, not the art, like that doesn't make sense that the world, because that's kind of referring to the world celebrating, and like instead of the art enthusiasts of the world. So it can't be A or F, I mean. And then the art enthusiast of the world, elevating him to a pedestal of international acclaim. So it is relevant to say that it's like not just the art enthusiast but the art enthusiast of the world, because it's talking about the international acclaim part. So like if they were just saying art enthusiasts, then that wouldn't be like the best for this context, because it's talking about how like he has like an international reputation or whatever. So we have to include the part that's talking about the world when we're describing the art enthusiast. So it would be either G or H, the world of art enthusiasts had already started celebrating, or the world's art enthusiasts. Well, the most concise answer would be H. So it has to be that one. Okay, so let's talk about number 4. So it says the underlying belief that art possesses a unique capability to not only inspire but also create joy. Okay, so here's one of the matching ones where it has to be not only but also. But there's also there's also the comma rule kind of put in there as well. So for a lot of people think that like just because you have the word but, like if you have a fanboys word, which but is one of the fanboys words, that automatically you have to put a comma before it. But that's not true. It's that you put a comma before those fanboys words if you could replace the comma and the fanboys word with a period. So first of all, this one has it after, so it's definitely not going to be that, no change. But if we were to say that this was correct, that means that we can put a period there and it works. So let's see if that's true. That means that it would be okay to say the underlying belief that art possesses a unique capability to not only inspire, period. And then another sentence would be also create joy, knows no bound. No, you wouldn't put a period there. So you can't put a comma but there. So it can't be that one. It has to be one of these options, C or D. Now, we have an independent clause here, which the independent clause would be the underlying belief that art possesses a unique capability to not only inspire, but also create joy, knows no bounds. That would be, or knows no boundaries, sorry. That would be the independent clause, followed by the dependent clause that starts with a verbing modifier, which would be making it a universal language that breaks cultural barriers. So then when we have an independent clause and a dependent clause that starts with a verbing modifier, we have to connect those with a comma in between. And there's no reason to place any extra commas like in the sentence. So C would be incorrect. Like there's no reason for that comma to be there. We just need that comma to be separating these clauses right here. So it would just be D. Okay, so now let's go to number 5. It says, having collaborated with renowned brands for monumental global events, including the World Cup and the Super Bowl. So automatically I see that that's a non-essential clause right here, that including the World Cup and the Super Bowl, so it has to be surrounded by commas. So I know I need to keep a comma here after Super Bowl. So I can cross out this one right here, J, because even though you can put 2 M dashes around it, around an interruption or a non-essential clause, it has to match. Like, you can't mix and match commas and M dashes when they're surrounding non-essential clauses, so it can't be J. So then let's keep going. His artwork appeals to a broad spectrum of audiences. Okay, so here's the non-essential clause right here. So I'm going to cross that out and then read it just as a sentence. Having collaborated with renowned brands for monumental global events, his artwork. Okay, so who's collaborating with renowned events? It's not going to be his artwork, so that's wrong. And that means that G is out. It's Burrito that is doing that. Like, artwork doesn't collaborate with anyone. So it would be H, because that corrects the improper, or what's it called? Which of the modifiers is that? Dangling modifier. That's what it is. Okay, so let's keep going to number 6. So for number 6, let me zoom out a little bit. It says, intricately designed pieces varying from collectibles to everyday utility items further solidify his wide-ranging influence. So for number 6, we have an interruption and non-essential clause right here where it says varying from collectibles to everyday utility items. So that whole non-essential clause has to be surrounded by either a pair of matching M dashes or a pair of matching commas. Now, because we don't have the option to change this M dash right here, I know it has to be surrounded by a pair of matching M dashes, meaning that the only answer choice could be B. So now let's go to number 7. So intricately designed pieces, and I'm going to just pretend that this isn't there, because it's what's it called, an interruption or non-essential clause. Intricately designed pieces further solidify his wide range and ranging influence. Solidify his wide and ranging influence. So wide is supposed to be modifying ranging. So you can't use and you can't use a comma there either. So it can't be F or G. And then so that just leaves us with solidifying his wide-ranging influence, or solidify his wide-ranging influence. So that would have to be further solidify. Give me a second to think. Oh yeah, duh. It's further solidify, because you can't say intricately designed pieces further solidifying his wide and ranging influence. That you're like waiting for other stuff to make it a complete sentence. So it would have to be, which one's the one that says solidify? J, that one. Okay, and for number 8, despite the staggering commercial success that has been bestowed upon them, Burrito, so them is supposed to be referring to Burrito, so we won't use them because that's referring to multiple people. We have to use upon him, so it would be G. And then number 9, the fervor with which he embarks on philanthropic, can't talk today, sorry. So the fervor with which he embarks on philanthropic journeys parallels the vivid hues that often dominate his canvases. So this is kind of like a word choice kind of one in a way, but it's the one that's testing like what matches how they're talking, like how formal or informal it is. So I have to like go back a little bit because I see like that's how the answer choices are varying. Burrito never strays from his altruistic ethos, leveraging his immense platform to champion charitable endeavors across the world. The fervor, so they're using lots of like fancy formal language, so I don't want anything that's like too casual. The fervor with which he embarks on philanthropic journeys parallels the vivid hues that dominate his canvases. So I definitely wouldn't say like usual color choices or the color palette he often selects. Like those aren't like honestly as obnoxiously worded as the other ones. So I would be choosing between A and B. So I would probably say it's the one that's more formal. So it would be A, because that kind of matches like the wording that they were using more versus like the kind of more normal, I guess, an informal way that they would describe it. If we chose like B, it would have to go along with stuff that's like more informal when they were using like all these like fancy formal words and stuff like that before. Okay, now for number 10, it says, okay, not content with simply producing visually captivating pieces, Brito has ensured that his underlying mission is not solely confined to the realm of aesthetics. It extends to shaping experiences. Okay, so all of the following will be acceptable except, so we're looking for what doesn't work, what's not acceptable. So we have two independent clauses, so we could connect them with a semicolon. We also have like an explanation or clarification following, like this would be the explanation or clarification, like it extends to shaping experiences, that like further explains or clarifies what they mean when they talk about Brito has ensured that his underlying mission is not solely confined to the realm of aesthetics, like it expands on that, explains it more. So remember, whenever we have like an independent clause followed by that like extra clarification or explanation, we can put an M dash in between, or we can put a colon in between. Those both work. So also, so H and J and F would be all acceptable. The one that wouldn't work is G, because we can't connect two independent clauses to things that could be sentences with just a comma. So that would be wrong to say, so that's why we have to pick it. So now let's go to number 11. His characteristic interplay of brilliant colors and audacious patterns are not only a testament to his unparalleled legacy. Okay. So this one is, hold on, let me see. His characteristic interplay of brilliant colors and audacious patterns. So I see what's changing is like is versus are. So automatically I should check for like, what do you call it? Subject verb agreement first. So let's see. So the subject here would be his characteristic interplay, and that's a singular subject. Remember, the subject doesn't always have to be right up against the verb. That's also something that they like to trick you with on the exam. The subject here, like what is the sentence mostly talking about? It, or like referring to, talking about, like would be his characteristic interplay. The other part, like of brilliant colors and audacious patterns, is just kind of like describing the subject more, but the actual subject is his characteristic interplay, which is singular. So we can't say are with a singular subject. Like you wouldn't say he are because he is singular. You would say he is. So we have to cross out the are ones. So B and D are out. So then we have to see, okay, the differences between the is ones. Is more than just a testament, is not only a testament. Okay, so that would be, I see not only, so that's probably like testing the, what do you call it, the words that go together, the word pairs that go together, thing that we talked about. I think it was like chapter 14, I want to say. So I see not only, which always needs to go with but also. So I see are not only unparalleled, but also is later on in the, passage, so it needs to go with not only, so then it has to be D. And just so you know, they wouldn't usually put something like this on the exam where it's like the but also was part of like the next thing as well, and like it was testing on word pairs with this and that. But the whole point, remember, of this review test was like I was writing it so that you can practice as many things as you can in the shortest amount of time that you have before going on and doing practice tests. So just FYI. So now we have, let's see, his characteristic interplay of brilliant colors and audacious patterns is not only a testament to his unparalleled legacy, but also sheds light on a trajectory that, given the patterns of his past achievements, indicates his influence will burgeon. I hope I said that right. I always mispronounce words. Which of the following would be an acceptable alternative? So we're looking for something that does work. So we know it has to be like, but also has to match with not only, so we need to include but as part of that, so it can't be H or J, so we have to cross those out. So now we're basically determining, like, should we put a comma before but or not? So now we have to think about clauses with comma placement. So his characteristic interplay of brilliant colors and audacious patterns are is not only a testament to his unparalleled legacy, but also sheds light on the trajectory that, okay, this is a whole lot of stuff. One sec, let me just like think this through. Okay, so it doesn't even matter about like the rest of the craziness over here, because when you say his characteristic interplay of brilliant colors and audacious patterns are not only a testament to his unparalleled legacy, that in itself cannot be an independent clause. And then like the part after but also sheds light on the trajectory. Like all of that could not be an independent clause either. Like you can't have a period go here. So you can't have a comma but a period go in place of comma but. So you can't say like his characteristic interplay of brilliant colors and audacious patterns is not only a testament to his unparalleled legacy. Like you couldn't just put a period there and it'd be okay. So you definitely can't put a comma but there, because remember, a comma then a fanboy's word is the same thing as period. So that means there should be no comma placed there. So it has to be the one with no comma, which would be F. So now for number 13, let's just see really quickly with the answer choices. It looks like its verb tense is changing, and then like there's either a comma after that or not. Okay. So number 13, his characteristic interplay of brilliant colors and audacious patterns are not only a testament of, sorry, I just got a text, are not only a testament to his unparalleled legacy, but also sheds light on a trajectory given the patterns of his past achievements, indicates his influence will burgeon. Okay, so we have a non-essential clause right here. This is a non-essential clause that we could cross out and still have a complete sentence. So it needs to be surrounded by either commas or em dashes. So I remember there was something with like that and the comma probably saying like whether or not we put a comma there. So we need the commas surrounding the the interruption, which is also called a non-essential clause. So it can't be C or D. It has to be one of the ones that keeps the commas around it. So then we have to determine, I think the difference was like indicate or indicates maybe. Yeah. So let's now determine without reading that part if it should be indicate or indicates. His characteristic interplay of brilliant colors and audacious patterns is not only a testament to his unparalleled legacy, but also sheds light on a trajectory that, so a trajectory is what should be matching indicate or indicates, on a trajectory that indicate his influence will burgeon, or a trajectory that indicates. A trajectory indicates. It has to be singular to match trajectory. So then the one that matches that would just have to be no change A.